I'm learning to fly, around the clouds. Hello and welcome to Learning to Fly Meets. Maybe you're wondering why I'm talking English. This is because we have an English-speaking guest today. I'm Johannes Schmidt from the duo Learning to Fly, here based in Hanover. We are going to have a very interesting guest living in Liverpool, working a lot in Germany. Her name is Jennifer Johnston, and she is a British singer, opera singer. She lives in Liverpool. She's born and raised there. Jennifer first started her education as a lawyer. So I'm wondering what took her then later to singing, and what was first, and where were her passion. She is a concert singer, so she has been singing for many years with the who of the great opera houses in Germany and all over the world. She also sang great roles in operas. She did her own album, Love Letter to Liverpool. In 2019, we're going to hear some of that album too. So, and here's my warm welcome to Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. You're sitting where right now?
At home in Liverpool.
At home in Liverpool.
Yes.
So when I first started out, doing some research about you and get to know you a little bit, I read that you became a lawyer before you became a singer. For one thing, I would like to know, how did that happen? But also, I used to have a girlfriend who studied opera, and she did something else before that too. So from her, I knew that it's not that easy to get in a little later than most of the other students. So what drove you to it, and how was your...
I intended to be I was a barrister in English terms, so that's an advocate, a court advocate. I'd always intended to do that. So although I did loads of singing during school, when I went to university, I went to Cambridge University. I accepted a place to read law, but also with a choral scholarship. So I was doing singing at that point when I was 18 and in my first year. But very quickly on arriving at college, it became apparent that I really didn't fit into the choir. It was a bit loud. And so they suggested that perhaps it wasn't working very well. So at that point, I left the choir after almost a year. And that freed me up then to do lots of other singing of other kinds, including my first opera, which I did with the University Opera Society. And that was Marriage of Figaro. So I was singing Marcellina in that. And on I went. I completed my degree and went up to London to Chambers, having done my bar exams. But then I sang at a wedding, and Sir Stephen Clearbury, who was the former director of music at King's College, who a lot of people will recognise from watching Carols from King's on Christmas Eve, which is broadcast worldwide. He had known me as a student and said to me after that wedding, I don't understand why you're not singing. Why don't you consider taking a year out of being a lawyer, applying to the conservatoires and just seeing how it goes, and I'll coach you. Wow. So I said, okay, I'll think about it. So I went to my singing teacher, who is still my singing teacher, Lillian Watson. And I said, this is what he thinks. And she went, you're mad because you're not ready. You haven't done any work. All you've been doing is, your proper job. And I said, well, I'll give it a go. And she was like, wow, I don't think this is going to go well.
I figured that Cambridge is not a university you go to because there was nothing better. It is the university, and to get into law in that school, I mean, that means you have some talent on the other.
Yes, but also, I suppose at this stage, I was already a tenant in Chambers, which meant that I had a proper job. And so I could say to my Chambers, I'm going to take a sabbatical year. And in fact, I went for the auditions and was offered a scholarship to the Royal College of Music in London. So I said to my chambers, I'm going for at least a year and I may not come back. And I never did go back. Because singing, once I'd started at the Royal College of Music, took its own life very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was only 2 weeks into my first term. At this point, I was 25. So I wasn't that old compared to others. Plenty of other people had started at a similar age. And a notice went up in college and said on it, auditions, open auditions for Britain's opera Albert Herring. It was going to be directed by Sir Thomas Allen, our very famous baritone opera singer, who was making his debut as a director. Anybody could audition. It didn't matter if you were in opera school. I wasn't in opera school. I was just an ordinary postgraduate. And I decided to give it a go. And I was chosen over everybody in the opera school to be given the role of Mrs. Herring, Albert's mum. And I really, it was a shock to my system that actually I was being rated more highly than others who were more advanced than I. So I did this role and was straight away signed by the agency that still managed my career, Asken Holt, who are one of the big 3 agencies internationally. So I suddenly had a career that I hadn't really ever expected to have.
It's maybe not only having to expect it, but also you haven't trained to have a career in that. So I'm like a street fighter as a singer, you know, I just sing. And so I can only imagine how hard it is not to have practiced to be an opera singer, to go to the opera school. It's the Royal London.
So after that year, when I was doing operas, even when I wasn't in the opera school, I did then do 2 years in the opera school at the Royal College of Music.
But you have to be, as far as I know, you have to be almost perfect to get into that school. And you didn't even work on that. So is it kind of a natural talent you have there?
I think being able to sing without a microphone and fill a huge auditorium, which, I mean, in my case, it can be really large auditoriums like the Albert Hall in London or the Bayerische Staatsoper, which is my opera home. It has to be that you have a voice that will carry that far.
Yeah.
So that's something you're born with. You can't change that. You can develop it and make it better. But certainly in terms of ability as well as a musician, that I would say you're born with too. Again, you can learn about music, but some of music is instinctive. So that you definitely can't sort of adopt later. The other thing that's in my favor is that I'm a very unusual voice type. So I'm basically a mezzo soprano or a mezzo contralto, depending on what piece it is really. But I'm quite a low voice, which is, if you look at women across the world, if you were to add up how many of me there are, there's a lot less than sopranos.
Okay. So, but aren't there also other registers like a dramatic soprano and lyric? So this comes on top of all that.
So that comes on top. So this is all what in Germany is called the Fach system.
Yeah, genau.
So it is the case that you are in you sing mainly in particular registers. So mezzo soprano or mezzo contralto is denoting how high I sing. But within that, there are then categorizations as to how heavy I am vocally. And I am the heaviest. So I'm a dramatic mezzo soprano or contralto. So that puts me in an even more rare category. So that's helpful. I don't have to fight quite as hard as sort of a light high soprano will ever have to fight for work or for roles or whatever. But it does mean that certainly in my opera life, my roles are not as exciting as a soprano's. I'm always the old woman, the witch, the prostitute, the maid, the old bag. There's never a moment where I think, oh, actually, that's glamorous. My roles are never glamorous.
So all that gives me the answers to my question why someone in the town of the Beatles or Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Flock of Seagulls becomes an opera singer, because I would think I never, put Liverpool somewhere close to opera, because, I didn't know. I don't know what I don't know. But
we don't have an opera house in Liverpool. So actually we don't have an opera company in the city. So opera wasn't something that I was exposed to growing up. We do have the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, and they're very rare because as an orchestra, they're
one of the oldest worldwide, right?
It's one of the very oldest in the UK. It's the second oldest, I think. They also are rare because they are the only orchestra that own their own hall. So Philharmonic Hall in Liverpool is a very beautiful venue, and what it's meant is that classical music is very much embedded in the city. But
this I didn't know, actually, really.
Yeah, but very, very clearly, Liverpool's music scene goes way beyond classical music. And actually, I grew up in a family where my mum quite likes classical music. I mean, one of her favorite pieces in the world is the Overture to Meistersinger, the Wagner piece. But my diet of music was very much along the lines of folk music, and my dad loves ELO and Queen and the Beatles and so on. So it was a mixed bag growing up. I wasn't in a family where classical music was part and parcel of life. I came to it myself, really. And that's almost better in a way, because it means then you were speaking about passion. When you come to something yourself where it's not been spoon-fed to you, you tend to feel more strongly about it. So
maybe this is the reason for your album, Love Letter to Liverpool. Before we continue our talk, I would like to introduce the audience to Liverpool in your way, in your words. You've made a recording, a video of Liverpool with a beautiful song, In My Liverpool Home, by the Spinners, I guess. And it was written by Pete McGovern. Yeah, okay. So we're going to hear this song, and after that we have a little bit some self shots of Liverpool you sent us before that. So everybody have fun now with Jennifer Johnston and In My Liverpool Home.
Exceedingly rare, meet under a statue exceedingly bare. And if you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. In my Liverpool home. I was born in Liverpool, down by the docks. My religion was Catholic, occupation hard knocks. At stealing from lorries I was adept, and under old overcoats each night we slept. In my Liverpool home. In my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare. Meet under a statue exceedingly bare. And if you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. In my Liverpool home.
So Jennifer, thank you for this great song. Now we know a little bit about more about your hometown, and it's. I promise you, whenever I get to Liverpool, I will not only visit, you know, the Beatles places and the pubs, but also the classical historical sites. And maybe I hear you sing there. You also teach there, right?
Yeah, not in terms of like taking private pupils or anything. I am a singing teacher to the choristers at Liverpool Cathedral. So I look after, there's over 50 of them, and they range in age from 10 to 18. And then I have adult choral scholars who are basically postgraduates who are about to take auditions for conservatoire places. So they come and do a year at Liverpool Cathedral where they're paid and they live in the cathedral close, and they get a lot actually out of that year. But it's the biggest job is the youngsters, looking after their voices.
Could I learn to sing opera?
I think anybody can try. Whether you're truly good at it is something that, pardon me, is something that you have to experiment with. But it's one of those things where I think you know pretty young whether you're able to sing well enough. People tell you anyway, at school or whatever. You could attempt it, but I think singing's good for everybody. I mean, it's good for your health, it's good for concentration, it's good for lots of things. So it's worth a try. So.
Yeah, what I mean is anybody could sing rock and pop music, I guess, or learn how to sing rock and pop music. But opera has to have a certain style, a certain kind of voice, and a certain power, and a certain, I don't know how you call it, volume, you know.
I think it's projection, really. It's more than volume per se. It's about whether your sound travels. You naturally need to have a voice that will carry, and in particular where it's sort of repertoire that I sing, which is really big. So the likes of Wagner or Elgar or Mahler or whatever, those orchestras are huge in terms of numbers of players that are required. So your voice has to be able to ride over the top of that. It can be over 100 players in an orchestra, and you're one person. So without a microphone, you have to be able to project. And if you're in a concert hall, of course, you have to project in a way that is different from an opera house. In an opera house, the orchestra is in a pit. So like in the theatre as well, you go to musical theatre. What that means is that the sound from the singers carries anyway over the top of the orchestra because they're at a higher level physically, and much easier for an audience. But if you're in a concert hall, you don't have that luxury. So although, I mean, conductors do try and balance orchestras, so they do try and, in particular, it's always the brass. They always have to be careful to not let the brass play too loud. Even then, you still, in order for me to be heard by anybody in that repertoire, I have to be able to sing not just well enough and in the right style and with correct pronunciation and whatever. My actual sound has to be something that will reach the ears of somebody sitting in the very back row of a concert hall that seats 3,000 people. So it's a skill of its own in a way.
Winner of Royal Philharmonic Society's Singers Award. This is something you received last year. So this must be a great appreciation for your work and for your voice, and also it should be like, you know, yes, you did the right thing leaving law and going into music. I mean, in such a short time, and again, you have not trained all your life to become a professional singer. So this came to you, and then you got this award, which is huge, I guess. I know.
Yeah, it's like it's the equivalent in classical music of receiving a BAFTA or an Oscar. So it was utterly shocking. I never imagined I would win it. So I turned up to the ceremony to have a really nice night out with friends and colleagues, having had the pandemic where we'd all been stuck at home. I wore a hilariously silly dress which I had made for a cabaret evening that I was supposed to be doing, but was cancelled because of the COVID situation. And it was black and gold and covered in zigzags, and was so startling to look at. I just thought, oh, well, we'll just wear that. No one will notice because I'm not going to win. So I don't need to worry about it. I'll just go and have a nice time. And apparently when my name was called, both my agent and our jaws dropped, and we both went, no way. And the panel on the stage laughed because they could see how shocked I was. But of course, I hadn't prepared a speech. So I had to go up and then speak as well. And it was beamed across the world, on this sort of live stream. So it was an extraordinary evening. And I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? You can never hope for things like that to happen.
I mean, you got nominated, which is already,
Yeah, and I think that was almost enough in a way.
Did you know the other nominees before? Mm-hmm. And did you not even slightly think, I can beat them?
No, because they're both great. And I've known both of them a long time. Yeah. And we're all the same generation, which it doesn't always happen actually at these awards. You can be nominated at any age for that award. And so it was just amazing. And so I still am not really over it. I look at the trophy. I have this beautiful statuette with my name engraved on it, and I look at it occasionally and I think, wow, it just, you never hope for things like that to happen. And obviously now it has. It's sort of then a question of how do I live up to it, really?
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what awards are for too.
Yeah, how do you live up to your own billing, So I'm conscious of that a little bit.
Yeah. When was that?
It was November 2021.
Okay. Yeah, so a couple of months ago.
6 months ago, yeah.
And then came Christmas time. So an early Christmas present.
Yeah. I mean, even just going out for the night.
Are you a religious person?
No.
No, but you're saying a beautiful song. I haven't heard that before. I'm not religious, but I love the Christmas season. So now with my young son, even more. So then I heard this song, and I got to tell you, sometimes when I have to do some work and need some alone time, and my son's sitting right next to me, I give him my cell phone and let him scroll through the videos. And of course, your videos are on the phone, and he always stops at I saw three ships. So obviously the sound and music, well, it does something to him, which he likes a lot. And then I started listening to that too. And this is why I want to show the rest of the world now this song, I Saw Three Ships, sung by Jennifer Johnston. So it's an early or late Merry Christmas here.
I saw three ships come sailing in on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. I saw three ships come sailing in on Christmas Day in the morning. And what was in those ships, all three, on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day? And what was in those ships, all three, on Christmas Day in the morning? The Virgin Mary and Christ were there on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. The Virgin Mary and Christ were there on Christmas Day in the morning. Ships all three on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Pray with us, sail those ships all three on Christmas Day in the morning. Oh, they sailed into Bethlehem on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Oh, they sailed into Bethlehem on Christmas Day in the morning. And all the bells on earth shall ring on Christmas Day, and all the bells on earth shall ring on Christmas Day in the morning. On on Christmas Day, and all the angels in heaven shall sing on Christmas Day in the morning. And all the souls on earth shall sing on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And all the souls on earth shall sing on Christmas Day in the morning. Then let us all rejoice again on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Then let us all rejoice again on Christmas Day in the morning.
Jennifer, we've talked earlier about your way into the music, into the opera singing, into your career. Now, let's maybe take a look back at the time when you made it. You got your first gigs and contracts with opera houses, and also singing certain roles. So I've learned an opera singer gives concerts. And I imagine he takes certain songs out of operas and sings those songs in a concert, maybe, or takes one conductor or one like Bach or Brahms or Mahler, and sings their titles. And the other thing they do is sing a role in the opera. Is that right? Kind of.
We can do concerts which are sort of opera excerpts.
Mm-hmm.
But that's rare for me because again, same thing as my voice type. My roles are not the famous glamorous ones.
Yeah.
So I don't have all the famous arias that I can rattle out in a concert. So
Okay.
I can't even remember the last time I did an opera excerpts concert.
Yeah.
Instead, what my concert life involves is singing Mahler symphonies,
Mm-hmm.
oratorios by Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, or whatever, Handel, and then other works. There are quite a lot of works written for my voice type,
Yeah.
where it's just me and the orchestra, and it's just some songs. Or like coming up in the next few weeks, I've got Dvorak's biblical songs,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm performing in Czech. So we do also usually perform them in the original language, and then on top of that, there is, as well as obviously singing roles in the opera house, which is fully costumed in a full production on stage. I also do recitals, and a recital is basically me and a piano and a bunch of songs.
Yeah.
So that's in venues like the Wigmore Hall in London, or the Concertgebouw has a recital hall in Amsterdam, or whatever. There's lots of recital venues all across the world. And so my career is very much a balance of those three types of jobs, I guess you'd say. Yeah. It varies a little bit season to season, but the predominant thing for me is that I normally do about 2 operas a season, and I do absolutely loads of the concert work with orchestra, and very little recital. So recital is very hard work, and so I normally don't do more than 1 program a season because it's too much to work on. So everybody's different. I've got friends who do very little opera, who do huge amount of recitals and a bit of concert with orchestra. So it's entirely variable depending on who you speak to and what voice type they are, and so on.
You were singing with the London Symphony Orchestra, the BBC Symphony Orchestra, but also you've done a lot of jobs in Germany too. So in Berlin, in Munich, in Dresden, you said, how did this connection to Germany come?
The first connection, and really the very most important connection, was the Bayerische Staatsoper. So I must be about perhaps 12 years ago now. I auditioned in London for the casting director at the Opera House. I was still very young in my career, and I'd done 2 years at Scottish Opera, and I was starting to think about developing the opera side of my career into bigger houses, but it's not something that happens to everybody. You have to be perceived as being good enough to go and sing in opera houses the size of Munich. Anyway, I sang Wagner to him, and he got very excited, and he said, I really want to come, you need to come to Munich, and we want to hear you standing on the stage, because Wagner is very specific. You have to have a big enough voice to be heard, and we need to test you out in the auditorium because we know what we're looking for. And so I flew out to Munich, and I stood on the stage, which was a great privilege anyway, because it's such a beautiful theatre. And I was hired straight away to do a ring cycle. So I made my debut there in the 2012-13 season. And then very rapidly, the moment that you start singing at that level, it's like there's a big tick against your name. And suddenly you're credible for everybody then. And then I had already debuted at the Salzburg Festival by then, but suddenly they were interested to give me things. And then La Scala came along and said, well, could you do these roles? And on it went. So it's been a really critical thing in my career, but also unusually, my relationship with them has endured now for a decade on stage. That doesn't happen everywhere. And it's also endured now a change of management even. So I'm lucky that I have roles there until at least 2024 now. Yeah. And so I'm very happy because it means that I'm at home when I'm there, because I know everybody and it's a team, and I really like working there. They're lovely people, and it's a total privilege. So I haven't had to seek much opera elsewhere because I'm always just very happy to be there. And
it also tells a lot about you as a personality, for one thing. They obviously like and love you, so that's why they want to keep you coming back. So this is also a tribute to how also your work ethic, probably, because I can imagine there's a lot of elbow work sometimes in those.
It can be, but interestingly, once you get up to working at the level that the Bayerische Staatsoper is, of course, in Germany, the only other theatres that come close really are the Berliner Staatsoper and probably the Deutsche Oper slightly as well. But the Berliner Staatsoper and the Bayerische Staatsoper both have the greatest singers of the day working there. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put myself in that category, but it means that there's a very high expectation of the level at which you work. So if you don't work so well under that sort of pressure, then you won't be invited back because it's not worth their time. Yeah. You have to be ready to be part of a system that at times can be quite brutal. There was one point where a few years ago, and I'd said I will never do it again, where at one point I was singing 6 roles at the same time. Oh, wow. And I'm not a member of the ensemble, so I don't live there permanently. And it wasn't that I wasn't used to it, it's just that it was the rate at which I was having to work. And in fact, even people in the ensemble wouldn't normally be made to do what I had to, which was I had a 3-day period where I was either rehearsing or performing all 6 roles. And I was doing 3 session days, and I was so tired that actually I thought, I can't do this to myself again. And thankfully, it hasn't come up again like that. Yeah. But it's I think being there and doing things like that has taught me a huge amount, not just about myself, but also about what I should want out of a life that is in opera,
Yeah. So did COVID or maybe even the Brexit give a little stop to the career, or could you manage a way around and still be, in like in the people's eyes and people's ears? Or do you feel I have to work even harder to get to the place where I was before?
It's been a really weird experience because obviously Europeans have also had COVID, but they haven't had to deal with the sort of fallout from Brexit. While there was uncertainty about visas, we British singers were not going to be employed until that was clarified.
Yeah, so that was a problem, right?
It was going to be a problem, but
Yeah.
thankfully for me, Germany very quickly said, you can work here for 90 out of 180 days without a visa. As soon as that happened, my diary went back to normal.
Did you have to talk to, did you have to talk somebody from the embassy, or is this for a musician?
It's for anybody.
Okay.
And because Germany is so well organized and not particularly critical of Britain, we had a very different approach given to us than was taken particularly by Spain. Spain were very aggressive indeed. I don't work in Spain really at all. Occasionally, but it's not my main place of work. Germany is much more important to me. It was very much the case, though, that of course everybody had to stop because of COVID. I missed 5 different productions at the Opera House in Munich because of it, because either I was not allowed in the country, or I hadn't yet been given my second vaccine, or it was just very complicated. And I was back on stage in Munich in October to December last year, and it was such a relief. I cried on the first night because it was like, thank goodness, I never thought this might happen. And I've just been there for 2 months. I've just done a new production of Britain's Peter Grimes at the Opera House, and it was almost surreal but hard as well, because of COVID still very present. We have to be tested all the time, and there's always the stress about all of that. But I do feel like things are starting to move again. I lost a lot during the 2 years that we were off work, essentially. I did keep going. I did do enough engagements in that time to feel like I hadn't stopped completely. I'm very lucky because over the period of COVID, I was the artist in residence anyway with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. So I did some really great concerts with them, and I did some recitals. I did a recital for the BBC and work also in the UK. I have a very good working relationship with the Berliner Symphony Orchestra, for example. So there was enough going on, and yet I'll never get back what I lost. So there's a sense of feeling that I have to forget about that in a way.
So this is the same thing over here, of course, on a much, not that high level as you work in, but I feel pretty much the same about that. And also I and my partner, Martin, we try to live up to the words of Bob Dylan: you better start swimming or you sink like a stone, because the times they are changing. So to me, it seems like you've been swimming and you've been fighting against the odds a little bit, and you came out well so far. So you got your gigs coming, and you got contracts, and you get to sing a lot more than during the last 2 years, right?
Yes, I mean, it's not been easy.
Yeah, it's not.
I've just had COVID as well, so my concern is about next week, whether I feel like my voice is up to it. It's quite a big thing to sing Bluebeard's Castle after you've not been well. So I'm yet to know how I feel about that. It was quite hard, although I had sung sufficiently often. I wasn't singing at the rate that I was used to before. So when I went back to the Opera House in October, I was completely exhausted, because I think it was the joy of being there, the stress of having to face an audience again of that scale, that in the house that's that big, and do the job that the role I did before Christmas was the last role I'd done at the Opera House before the pandemic. And obviously I'd missed all these things in between. So it was very strange going back on stage in the same costume as I'd worn before. But also before the pandemic, we'd made a DVD of it and had won all these awards, a huge number of awards. And I was just really concerned that I wouldn't live up to what it had been like before. Actually, it was okay, but it was a strange feeling. So it's not been an easy time.
Did UcoM Liverpool? So you live in an UNESCO city of music in Liverpool. We do over here, and I know that the city of Hanover, with this Department of Culture, I would say, does a lot for the musicians here in town. If they are creative and if they, you know, bring in some ideas and then they say, okay, we support you. How did this go in Liverpool? Did you feel their support? Did you have, you know, possibilities to think outside the box and do other stuff and get supported with that?
I mean, there were opportunities, largely online, which I think probably was the case in Germany as well.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the Liverpool City Region Music Board, which is unique actually in the UK. Manchester's just set up as something similar, but literally only just now. But the Music Board in Liverpool has been in existence for almost 5 years. And I think there were various schemes put in place. There was some money as well to support talent. But of course, that was all very short term because actually we hadn't got a clue what was going to happen week to week even. I think now we're at a point where things are a little bit clearer. We feel like we're starting to get more of an idea of who survived the pandemic in terms of venues and in terms of even individual acts, really, that who has been able to continue. I mean, a lot of musicians in particular, particularly if they sing in quite small venues, where those venues were shut and the like, they've then gone off and got other jobs. So a lot of them won't necessarily return. Yeah, we're not out of the woods yet, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, but you're on a great way. And what I've learned from you today, Jennifer, is not that you're obviously a great singer and a devoted opera singer and musician. You also take care of the young talents, and you also take care of the musicians and the music fans in your town, in Liverpool. So I'm very happy that we had the chance to talk to you today. For now, thank you so much for that. I have had the chance also to scroll through some of your videos and songs, and one song you sent me really took my heart at the first, you know, at the first note. It's Blackbird. Not only that I'm a huge Beatles fan, but also Blackbird has so many references to today. It's the lyrics are still, they are still, you know, like would have been written today, so they're very actual, but also music-wise, it's not just pop. I mean, of course, obviously Paul McCartney is one of the greatest songwriters ever, you know, but even he had to listen to Bach, what he was doing. Can you tell us, you know, before you say goodbye, a little bit why you chose this song, and maybe also why this is a great song to say, to have it as the last song of our show?
When I was looking at what tracks to put on the album A Love Letter to Liverpool, I tried to reflect the city's heritage and my own heritage. And it's inescapable that as a city, I mean, even look what's behind my head is a Beatles picture. They are so intrinsic now to the history and the music of Liverpool that it would have been really wrong to release an album with no representation from them at all. And I've always loved Blackbird the most, actually, of all the songs. I have a variety that I love, but Blackbird sort of stands almost on its own, really. And I think partly because of its relevance, because it still has a relevance today. Obviously, civil rights movement has changed, but with Black Lives Matter and the profound changes that we all require in our society about how people are treated, the lyrics are as relevant today as ever. But also melodically, McCartney has talked openly about his inspiration from classical music, and you can really hear it in this song. So it doesn't feel like it sticks out on the album. It's not such a pop track that people wonder why it's there. In the end, it's just a really great song.
All right, so we listen to this song now. We see you perform. Perform in this video. I say, and Irving, I think I'm talking, with his voice too. We thank you very, very much for your time. We wish you all the best of luck and all the best of success. And I really hope someday you come to Hanover and sing over here, or when I'm in Liverpool, I will knock on your door.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All the best. Bye bye, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. You were only waiting for this moment to rise. You were only waiting for this moment to